Good morning, church. Let's all stand together and worship God this morning. Good morning, church. It's so good to see you this morning and worship with you. And I'm so thankful for God's goodness. And I'm so thankful for his faithfulness. God is always faithful to us. We can always count on his faithfulness. So this morning, I just want to encourage you to continue to lift your voices up to heaven and worship with us this morning. Yes, I will believe it. You make mountains move. You make giants fall. And you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. And I will speak to my fear. And I will praise to my doubt. You are faithful then. You'll be faithful now. You're always faithful. And I'm standing on your word, calling heaven down to earth. And you will fight my enemies, and this will end in a victory. And I will believe it. Yes, I will believe it. That you make mountains move. You make giants fall. And you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. And I will speak to my fear. And I will praise to my doubt. That you are faithful then. You'll be faithful now. Oh, you are faithful then. You'll be faithful now. And I know that I know you never fail. Yes, I know that I know you never will. And I know that I know you never fail. Oh, yes, I know that I know you never will. 'Cause you make mountains move. You make giants fall. And you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. And I will speak to my fear. And I will praise to my doubt. That you are faithful then. You'll be faithful now. Oh, you make mountains move. You make giants fall. And you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. And I will speak to my fear. And I will praise to my doubt. That you are faithful then. You'll be faithful now. Oh, you are faithful then. You'll be faithful now. You go before I know that you've even gone to win my war. You come back with the head of my enemy. You come back and you call it my victory. Oh. much better way. And to know before I do, where my heart can seek to find your truth. Your mercy is the shade I'm living in. You restore my faith and hope again. All I did was pray, and all I did was worship. And all I did was bow down, and all I did was stay still. Just bow down, and I'm just gonna stay still. You were the word, the you brought it down. My sin was great, your love was greater. So what could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. Death could not hold you. The veil tore before you. You silenced the boast of sin and grave. The heavens are roaring the praise of your glory. For you are raised tonight again. And you have no rival. You have no equal. Now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom. Yours is the glory. Yours is the name above all names. What a powerful name it is. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a powerful name it is. Nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. Everybody coming from all around. They be coming up from town to town. Just for a moment to hear a sound. Tell me, how does it feel to get a win? Everything becomes clear. You're starting to hear it's the kingdom again. Tell me, how does it feel to get a win? Everything becomes clear. You're starting to hear it's the kingdom again. Yeah.
Well, my sister has an incredible brother, and I'm not sure she recognized growing up how lucky she had it. I remember one time I was in middle school, and I had to eat breakfast, and so I went to the fridge, and there I saw what my breakfast was going to be the night before. I had a pizza delivered, so I had some leftover pizza in the fridge, which was mine clearly because I had it delivered. My parents paid for it, but I had it delivered, and so it was in the fridge, and next to it was the last piece of pie that I'd kind of claimed. There was a piece of pie that was left. And so, as any good middle school student knows, when you start breakfast, you start with the pie, and then you move on to the pizza. You got to go dessert first, and that's what I was going to do. And so I pulled out the pie, and I saw that the savage that I lived with, my sister, had gone in and scooped all of the filling out of the pie, but just left the crust. I'm like, who does that? So I was mad. I was a little annoyed. I'm like, at least I still have my pizza. So I wanted pie and pizza for breakfast, but I will settle for just having my pizza. And I opened up the pizza box, and there I saw that she had also scraped off all of the cheese and toppings off the pizza and just left the crust and the sauce. But again, just gone full savage on my food. And then we started fighting, and we got in trouble for fighting, and I was really mad at her for doing that, and she was really mad at me for, I can't remember. And it's probably because she had me as a brother, so I didn't do anything to her. Or what may be more likely is in life, we kind of have a tendency to hold on to the wrongs that other people have done to us and diminish the wrongs that we have committed to other people. Like, we are real quick to hold on to the things that other people have done against us and other people have done to wrong us, and we are fast to hold on to those things and remember all the ways that people have failed us, all the ways that people have hurt us, and we hang on to those things. But when we have to think through the things that we have fallen short on, in our flaws, in the way that we have hurt other people, we're in a much bigger hurry to let go of those things. And that's one of the dynamics we're going to talk about this morning as we talk about the idea and concept of forgiveness. And we're going to see just how vitally important this is. So if you have your phones or your tablets, I'd invite you to follow along with us today. There's a great app that you can download in the App Store of your choosing called the Bible app. It's completely free, and it has a lot of great resources available to you within the Bible app. Once you've downloaded and installed that app on your device, there's a feature within the Bible app called Events. And there you can either enable your locations or type in zip code 54201, 54201, and there Lakeside Community Church will pop up, and you can follow along with us that way. If you have a traditional Bible with you this morning, we're going to be in the New Testament book of Matthew. So Matthew is a gospel. It's an account of the life and ministry of Jesus. And Matthew is the very first book in the New Testament. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 18. And we're going to start in verse 21 here in just a minute as we look at this idea that it's always easier to see the flaws and the faults in others and what this means for us and how we live our lives and the relationship we have to have with forgiveness and why this is so important. So we get started this morning in Matthew 18, verse 21, where we read these words. Then Peter came up and said to him, Peter came up and said to Jesus, Lord, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? As many as 7 times? Let me read that again. Peter came up and said to Jesus, Lord, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? As many as 7 times. And this is a very good question. This is a question that we've all wrestled with and we all struggled with at times of our lives because people will wrong us. People have wronged us. It's part of living. You know from growing up that people are going to wrong you. And so this is a question that's important. This is a question that we all need to ask and we all need to form an answer on. And that question is, how many times do I have to forgive someone? And so Peter asks a question that we can all relate to. And what is the answer? Some of us might think once. You get one chance, and then you're done. Some of us might think twice. That, all right, I'll give you 2 opportunities, but then that's it. Some of us are really gracious, and we're like, I'll give you, a third chance, but we're done there. Some of us answer 0. They're like, nope, you've done me wrong. You're dead to me. I mean, if you've ever met a 4-year-old, that's where they are. Now, granted, after 5 minutes, they're over it, but for those 5 minutes, they're done with you. You don't matter anymore. They are done with you. Some of us still have the mentality of a 4-year-old. It's just our patience has grown an awful lot. And so what used to be 5 minutes has become 50 years. And there's a wide range of time frames that can fall in there. But that's the question, is how many times do we have to forgive people? And what is the answer? What's the answer in your life? And you can think through that. You don't have to answer out loud, but you can think through that question. It's how many times do I have to forgive someone? Now, before we answer that question, I want to look at the question itself. Because the question that Peter asks itself tells us everything we need to know. Peter doesn't ask, now, Lord, how many times will my brother have to forgive me when I do something wrong against him? That's not the way that Peter asked the question. And the reason is because this is a universal truth, that it is easier for us to look out the window than it is to look in the mirror. It is easier for us to look out the window and to see the ways that other people have hurt us. It's easier for us to look out the window and see the wrong in other people's lives. It's easier for us to look out the window and see the flaws that everyone else carries than it is for us to look in the mirror and to look at our own flaws, to look at our own shortcomings, to look at the way that we ourselves have failed and hurt other people. It's always easier and more pleasant to look out the window and to see the ways that you have hurt me than it is for me to look in the mirror and acknowledge the ways that I have hurt you. And that's what we see right here from Peter's question. In the very way that it's asked, it tells us everything. How many times do I have to forgive my brother? And then Peter just throws out an example. He's like, 7 times, Jesus? I mean, that is the most spiritual answer ever. I mean, Peter's feeling good about himself. He's like, 7 times? I mean, once or twice, that's what most people would answer. 3 or 4 times? Wow, you're really patient. 5 or 6? No. But 7 times? Only a really spiritual person would have the patience and the grace and the mercy enough in their lives to even suggest such a thing to Jesus. I mean, this is classic teacher's pet example right here that Peter is throwing out to Jesus. Like, I know these other people would struggle with this concept, Jesus, but not me. I mean, would 7 times be enough, Jesus? Would that be good? How many? And Jesus said to him, I do not say to you 7 times, but 77 times. Now just imagine being Peter hearing that answer. That you've just asked Jesus, how many times do I have to forgive my brother? 7 times? And when Jesus says not 7 times, Peter's going to be like, thank you. I didn't really mean it. I just threw it out there. I mean, we all know what that's like. We throw the offer out. We don't really mean it. And we think certainly this other person is socially aware enough to not take us up on the offer that I just had to throw out there. Not because I really mean it, but because I feel like I should. It makes me a good person to throw out the offer. But there's the understanding between all of humanity that just because I threw out that offer, you're not really going to accept the offer. And we're just going to acknowledge that I'm a really good person for throwing out the offer anyways. That's what's going on here. Peter's like, 7 times, Lord, look at how spiritual I am. I don't really mean that I'm going to forgive that idiot brother of mine 7 actual times, but I just want you to know, Jesus, that I'm willing to because I'm so spiritual. And Jesus is like, no, Peter, you don't have to do it 7 times. And Peter's got to be like, thank you, because after 3, it's exhausting. Can we be honest? That's just exhausting. But Jesus doesn't stop there. He said, not 7 times, Peter, but 77. You and I, we're not on the same page, Peter. We're not even in the same book. Jesus says, I'm going to blow your mind with what I'm telling you. It's not 7, it's 77. And this is the reality. When we are people who are in need of forgiveness, we love this answer. We love it. When we're the people who've wronged someone, when we're the people who have done something that we regret and we need to be forgiven, this is an answer we cling to. This is an answer we absolutely love. We are all about this answer. And let's just be honest. When we're people that have been wronged, when we're people that are in the situation where we need to forgive someone, this answer loses a lot of the appeal. This answer becomes a lot more difficult for us to be excited about. When we're in need of forgiveness, we love this answer because we can even play this card with people that love Jesus. We're like, oh, you don't want to forgive me? Well, Jesus said 77 times. And some of you, because this is so difficult on the other end, you've got the list going. And some of you right now are on like 75, and you are just keeping track. And once 76 and 77 come, you're going to be like, thank you, Lord, because now we've hit 77 and I am done. And you can't wait until you're done. You've got the list going right now, and you are fresh on 75, and you cannot wait for it to hit 77 because you feel like I can be done with this and over. And so Jesus tells a story to highlight the importance of this, to illustrate just how vital forgiveness is in our lives. He starts it in verse 23 of Matthew 18. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. And since he could not pay his master, ordered him to be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. So, Jesus tells us a story. And he starts the story with there's a king. And the king has a servant, and the servant owes the king a lot of money. One servant owes the king 10,000 talents. Now, this isn't $10,000. It's a lot more than that. At the time that Jesus was telling his stories, he would want the stories to be relatable to the audience who is hearing them. And so the regions that they were in were overseen by the Roman government. The Roman government in 4 different regions at that time would receive tax money. And the total they would receive from the 4 different regions would total to 900 talents a year. Did you catch that? 900 talents of taxation would come in total for the 4 regions a year. In Jesus' story, he tells us the story of a servant who owes his king 10,000 talents. So if 900 talents came in for 4 regions a year, we're talking essentially about 11 years of total taxation for 4 regions as being what the servant owed his master. In today's dollars, we're talking trillions and trillions of dollars. This is a massive amount of money. There's no way that this could be repaid. No single way that this could be repaid. And since he could not pay, in the story that Jesus tells, the king says, go sell him and his wife and his children into slavery. Since they cannot pay their debt, they must go and they must become slaves as a result of that. I just want to talk about an aside here for a minute, and we're going to talk more about the perceptions that we see ourselves. We're going to talk about more about forgiveness here. But I want to sidetrack for just a minute because of the implications that this has in people's lives, because of the real world implications of this and everything else. And I just want to say this. I just want to say, be careful about how much money you borrow. Be careful about how much debt you take on. Just be very wise about that. And I know that's a countercultural statement in our society. We don't like the idea of delayed we don't like the delayed satisfaction or gratification. We want everything instantaneously. We want it now, and there's all kinds of thoughts and ideas of just put it on debt, just do what you can. I just want to encourage you. I just want to caution you. Be very wise about how much money you borrow. Be very wise about that. And I know everybody's got strong feelings on what happened this last week with student loans, and we're not going to get into that, but I just want to caution those of you who are looking at schooling, be wise and be careful about how much debt you take on as you're operating in life. Be wise and be careful, because this has the potential to sidetrack your life. The choices you make financially have so much ability to bring you peace or to bring you just an insane amount of anxiety and worry and strife in your life. And I just want to caution you, God has given us a plan for how we can remove the anxiety and the strife in our lives if we'll operate our finances according to his plan. And I just want to caution you, be wise about how much debt you're willing to take on in your life. On the other side, I want to caution you. If you're going to loan money to somebody, be very careful about that. This has the ability to ruin a relationship faster than almost anything else. And so I would just caution you, just personally, I wouldn't loan money to somebody unless you can afford to look at it as a gift. I'm not saying you have to structure it that way, and I don't really care how you structure it, but don't leverage yourself in such a way that you couldn't look at it as it just being a gift to somebody else. And if it's more than that, then don't do the loan no matter how much you love them. But I've seen so many friendships and so many families torn apart from this dynamic. What was supposed to be a loan, the inability to repay it, and then families are severed and relationships are bitter, and some are never restored all over this. So I know you love people and I know you want to help them out, but I would just caution you. Be wise in how much money you borrow. Be wise if you're going to loan somebody money, and if you choose to make that decision, then don't loan them beyond what you could comfortably write off and say, I don't need that money back no matter how much you love them, because the relationship is more important. So for what that's worth. And the reason that I want to pause there is because we know this has the ability to rip apart family relationships. We know this has the ability to discourage people and to cause anxiety in your world. And if that's true in your circumstances, what I want you to know is we have a team of people that is here and available at Lakeside that is willing to walk alongside you 100% confidentially, so nobody else is going to know, but is willing to look at what's going on in your finances, and if things are a mess, to come up with a plan to help you so that you can remove the piece of the equation that is causing all the stress, and you can do money according to God's plan for money, and you can make it so that money is something that can bring you security instead of something that brings you all of this pain. So we make that available to you. You don't have to take us up on that, but I know that the enemy wants to come and he wants you to think that there's shame and there's got to be secrecy involved because this is dealing with finances. And I just want you to know that doesn't have to be the case at all. And our team is willing to meet with you confidentially, and they're not going to share your details with anybody else, but they want to put a plan in place in your life that removes all the fear and all the anxiety according to this in your life. So I just want to make that available to you, because this does have the ability really to sidetrack your life so quickly. We move on. In verse 26, we read this. So the servant fell on his knees, imploring him, have patience with me, and I will pay you everything. Now, there's no way you're paying that much money back. There is no way you can pay that back. And at this point in time, the servant's just trying to buy time. I mean, go to your favorite gangster movie in your mind, the one you're probably like, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to admit I love that movie in church or not. All right, we've seen them. All right, it's fine. Go to that movie in your mind and think through the scene where they're hanging somebody over the ledge. They're grabbing them by the feet. They're making them stare down at the sidewalk below that if they let go of, they're just going to become a little bump and just splattered everywhere. And think through, as they're being hung over there, they're just yelling out anything and everything that they possibly can. I'll take care of it. I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll be able to pay back the money. They are just freaking out. And that's what's going on in this story with the servant. They're just freaking out, and they're saying, I will repay it. I'll repay it. I just need a little bit more time. That's what's going on right here. And out of pity for him, the master of that servant released him and forgave the debt. He looks at the servant, he looks at the debt that is owed, that there's no possible way the debt could ever be repaid. And the master looks at the servant and he says, I'll forgive it. I'm not going to extend your payment term. I'm not going to change the interest rate. I'm not going to do any of those things. Your debt is now forgiven. It's wiped completely clean. And we know that feeling, how freeing that feeling is. When we have wronged somebody, when we are in the wrong, when we have messed up, and the person looks at us and they tell us, I forgive you, and they mean it. And the weight that is lifted off of our shoulders and out of our soul when we feel that. And ultimately, as people that love and follow Jesus, the weight that we recognize that God has lifted from us, the debt that we could never repay, this is the ultimate picture that Jesus wants us to understand of a God who forgave us, not because of anything we could do, not because of any way that we could repay it, but because of God's love for us, that while we were still messing up, while we were still rebelling against Him, He loved us anyway, so much so that Jesus would come and pay the price on the cross for our sins and raise again 3 days later, but telling us that you can't buy forgiveness. You can't buy a way to be made whole for all the wrongs that you've committed in your life. It's just my gift to you. And how incredible it would be if this story just ended there. But it doesn't. But when the same servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. And seizing him, he began to choke him, saying, "Pay what you owe." So the servant who had just been forgiven of the immense debt that he owed leaves and recognizes, hey, there's that guy that owes me money. Now, 100 denarii isn't $100. It's more significant than that. We're talking about 3 months of a salary. So it's a substantial figure. But it's nothing compared to 11 years of full taxation for 4 regions. And he sees the guy who owes him 3 months of a salary, and he goes up and he starts choking him. The guy that has just been forgiven seizes the guy who owes him money, and he starts choking him, demanding that he be repaid what he is owed. So his fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, "Have patience with me, and I will pay you." The guy getting choked falls down and begs for mercy, and he asks for time. And here's my question. What's easier to repay? 3 months of a salary or 11 years of taxation for 4 regions? We have 2 people who owed debts that they could not repay. We had 2 people who asked for more time. We had 1 person who was not only given more time, but whose debt was completely paid off, completely taken care of. We have another whose requests for more time are met by him being choked out and him being told, "You must pay." So his fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, "Have patience with me, and I will pay you." He refused, verse 30 tells us, and went and put him in prison until he should pay the debt. There's no second chance. There's no more time. He's thrown in prison. The same person who just had a debt, so much greater, completely forgiven. And we look at this story, and it makes us upset because we're like, this is irrational. And we're right. This is completely irrational. This is irrational behavior. It makes no sense. It enrages us when we see how the person who was forgiven of so much acts towards the person who needed to still be forgiven, but be forgiven of a whole lot less. And it makes our blood boil. And here's the thing. The same principle can be true of us. That we who have been forgiven by God, the moment we place our faith and trust in Jesus, have been forgiven of greater debt than we can even fathom, of every sin we've ever committed and every sin we will ever commit, of every mistake and every flaw and every failure that is in our past and every mistake and flaw and failure that is in our future and yet to come. That God has forgiven us of all of those things, every single one of them. And yet when we are wronged by people, how we can hold on. How when we are wronged by people, we cling to it. When we are people who are in need of forgiveness, we love this concept and we love this idea of God. We love how much He forgives us. But when we are in need of forgiving someone else, how we struggle with this. Because we remember how they've wronged us. We remember what they've done. And we don't want to let go. When his fellow servants saw what had taken place, they were greatly distressed. And they went and reported to their master all that had taken place. Other people witness this. Other people know what's going on. They know the guy has been forgiven of a debt of 10,000 talents. And they know that same very guy goes and he's choking somebody over 100 denarii. They're like, this doesn't add up. This is irrational. This doesn't make sense. This is wrong. Other people witness this and they are appalled. But there's somebody who's even more appalled. We find out about that in the next few verses. Then his master summoned him and said to him, "You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me. And should not you have had mercy on your fellow servant, as I had mercy on you?" And in anger, his master delivered him to the jailers until he should pay all his debt. You see, as appalled as everybody else was by this, and rightfully so, as appalled as everyone else was with this, the master was the most appalled. And the question that he has is a question that we must answer. The question that he has is this: how can you accept forgiveness but not offer it? How can you accept forgiveness but not offer it? How can you, after experiencing what God has done in your life and how He has come and He's met you in the mess, how can you accept that forgiveness and not extend it to others? How does that work? And the sobering answer that we have to come to terms with is it simply doesn't. It simply doesn't. That once we have been marked and once we have experienced the forgiveness that God offers us, it compels us to extend that forgiveness to other people. And the master responds by throwing the servant who refused to forgive in jail. And then Jesus hammers this point home. So also my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother from your heart. How important is this to Jesus? How important is forgiveness to God? Well, Jesus answers emphatically. And He tells us. So you might scratch your head and you might say, wait a minute. I thought that following Jesus, I thought that salvation is all dependent upon God, and there's no way that I could earn it or deserve it, and you're absolutely right. So Jesus isn't saying here your ability to forgive somebody earns your salvation. What Jesus is talking about here is just this: the fact that we who follow Jesus have been forever altered and forever changed through the forgiveness that God offers us. As a result of that, if we legitimately follow God, there is no choice for us but to forgive other people. We don't get the choice. We must forgive others. Now, here's the struggle. Struggle is a couple things. Number one, we're the ones that have been wronged. I don't want to forgive people that have wronged me because it hurts. I don't get that say. What Jesus has told us to do is to forgive. And sometimes people are going to fail us in very small ways, and it's easy. But sometimes people are going to fail us in really big ways, life-altering ways, in ways that cut and scar to our core. And the question then is, do I still have to forgive? And the answer is yes. But I want to be very clear. There is a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Now, there can be no reconciliation until forgiveness happens, but there can be forgiveness apart from reconciliation. And God has not commanded us to be reconciled to everyone. There will be people in your life who hurt you and who do things towards you that you are obligated to forgive. You are obligated to forgive them. But you are entitled to keep your distance from them. You are not mandated to invite them back into your life in the same relationship you had with them before. Forgiveness and reconciliation are different. Forgiveness releases the weight. It releases that desire that we harbor against somebody, that we want to see horrible things happen to them. Where because they've hurt us, we can't wait until we see God to smite them. And that's what we really want. We're like, God, smite them. You're like, pray for my enemies, Jesus? Got that covered. I would love to. And forgiveness is when we stop praying all the horrible things will happen to them. Forgiveness is when we let go and stop cheering when awful things come their way. It's letting go of the weight. It's acknowledging the hurt. And it's moving on. Forgiveness is an obligation. Reconciliation is a decision. We are required to forgive. We aren't mandated to be reconciled. We love this idea. We love this idea when we're in need of it. And maybe for some of you today is the very first time where you're wrapping your mind and your head and your heart around this idea. That we have a God who sees us in the midst of our messes and loves us anyways. And maybe you've come to the point where you've just almost turned it off because you're like, God can't love me. God's seen my addiction. God's seen all the choices that I've made. God's seen the ways that I've failed over and over and over again. And the words I just want to encourage you with are this: not 7 times Peter, but 77. That your failures and your flaws do not repel and prevent God from loving you. And He loves you and desires a relationship with you today. Maybe you've come to terms with that, and we hope you have. Now the challenge for you is somebody's on 76. But we don't have the luxury of not forgiving. Because when we've experienced what it's like to be forgiven of all of the things that we've done wrong, we can't help but offer that same forgiveness to those who have wronged us. Jesus, I pray that you would help us. Forgive those who have hurt us. I pray you would help us let go. Help us stop harboring bitterness. Help us remember of all that you have forgiven us of, and use that as our catalyst to forgive others. God, I pray for those who are here and watching on the stream who haven't fully embraced your forgiveness in their lives. And I pray today would be the day that they don't fight it any longer. But today would be the day that they enter into a relationship with you, Jesus. That they recognize and confess in the quietness of their heart right now their sin to you. And the fact that they have messed up. They have fallen short of your standard of perfection, as we all have. But understanding your love for us, God, that you went and you paid the price for our sin once and for all on the cross. And 3 days later, you rose again. I pray, God, in the quietness of this moment, in the quietness of their heart, now would be the time to give their lives to you. And they experience fully, for the very first time, your forgiveness. And God, they see that it changes everything. And God, as people that follow you, may we be quick to forgive others who have wronged us. Help us when it's hard. Help us when we don't want to. But remind us of what you have done for us. And may we respond accordingly, Jesus. In your name we pray. Amen. Following Jesus compels us. It compels us to forgive when we take stock of all that we've been forgiven of, and it compels us to live our lives differently, to have a desire to love others, to have a desire to impact others, and to show the world the love of Jesus that we possess. I want to thank you at Lakeside for all that you enable us to do. This past week, we were able to partner with the Von Steel Winery here in town, and we linked up with the Wolf Den program through the Algoma schools, and Wolf Den comes and it meets kids right where they are with some of the needs that they have, and it partners with families and it works alongside of them. And we were able to sponsor 25 students this year with all their school supplies needs. And then we did a concert at the winery on Friday night, and in concert with them, between the school supplies and the money that was raised at the concert for everything, over $3,000 went into the program. So thank you for your generosity. Thank you for impacting our community, and all that's made possible because of your support of Lakeside. So thank you for everybody who does contribute and enables us to do what we do here. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Speaking of contributions, today's a bittersweet day for us at Lakeside. I've had the privilege of being at Lakeside for a little over 4 years now, and before we brought on a full-time worship pastor, our worship was led by a team entirely of volunteers, and John Novak was part of that, as well as Scott and Linda Thomas. And many of you know Scott and Linda Thomas, and on Friday of this week, they are going to be signing the papers to close the sale of their home, and they are relocating to Florida. So it's not just been 4 years that they have done a lot of things here at Lakeside, serving and worship and just impacting so many people through what they've done, but it was a number of years even before that. So if you know Scott and Linda, make sure you tell them goodbye, Trader, and that we're gonna miss them. They can't handle winter anymore, but they are people who love God, they love Jesus, and they love people. And Lakeside is better as a result of having you been here and serving here. So from the bottom of our heart, not just for the 4 years I've been here, but for the time that preceded that even, thank you for all that you have done. And we know you love Jesus, and you're going to go continue to serve him in Florida, but we're going to miss you guys. So thank you for what you've done. This will be one of the few times in my life I say this. Don't come to church next Sunday morning. We are not having our 2 services next Sunday morning at 8:30 and 10. Instead, we're doing 1 service next Sunday night, 6 o'clock, outdoors. Going to have food trucks. We're going to have fireworks. And it's not going to be Derek and I running around with sparklers. We have a professional firework company coming in, doing fireworks. You are not going to want to miss this. It is next Sunday night. It's totally free except the food trucks. You have to buy your own food. But it's a totally free event next Sunday night, 6 p.m. You aren't going to want to miss that. We have more events coming up as well. There's a fire tonight for people who are 55 and over. If you'd sign up for that on the information table, as well as a men's breakfast coming up on Saturday, September the 17th. More details are available on that if you scan the QR code out at the information table. I know that's a lot of information. So my name's Brian. I'm part of the team here. I will be available out in the lobby to answer any questions that you may have. We love you guys. It's not just something we say. We really love you guys. It is our privilege to serve here. And if there's anything we can do to help you in your spiritual journeys, don't hesitate to let us know. Have a great day.